Hello and welcome again to the Benalla Future Work Summit 2022. I'm Catherine McMillan and it's great to see everyone here today in real life and 3D and Technicolor. I know it can be a little bit perhaps daunting. I know it's my first major event in a long time, but it's wonderful to see people in the flesh. So just a few housekeeping things before we kick off. I mentioned the lunch boxes are on your tables. There are still some coming out, but please share them around. They're for your enjoyment today. There are water bottles on the tables. They're yours to keep if you'd like them. You can take them round with you to the breakout sessions that we do in the second half of today. If you want to write your name on them or tie something off like you do with a suitcase, you're very welcome, but they're yours, and that's thanks to North East Water and Charles Sturt University. The bathrooms are down to my left and just near where the sign that says Benalla Rural City Council. So again, just make yourself, if you need a drink during the day or you need to go to the bathroom, just head off as you need. And finally, your summit materials are on the tables in front of you. They include the deep dive report, today's program, and the breakout session options when we get to the second half of the program. You've also got your very own fold-up shopping bag, a little freebie to say thank you for coming today, to promote Benalla and all our wonderful street art, and it's the perfect size for your handbag or your man bag. But I'd now like to welcome our Mayor, Councillor Bernie Hearn, for the acknowledgement to country.
Thank you, Catherine, that's lovely. Welcome everybody, oh my God. This is a really good turnout. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to the elders from other communities who may be here today. Everybody enjoy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name's Dom Testoni. I'm the CEO of the Manila Rural City Council. I came here 3 years ago. Great first 12 months. Last 2 years have been a bit of a challenge, but it's great to see so many people coming along today to support this initiative. I'd just welcome 75 odd people here from a variety of businesses throughout Benalla and from industries, education, community jobs and skill agencies, local, state and federal government. And it is absolutely fantastic to see people take time out of their busy day to come along for what is the third stage of this particular project. I do need to acknowledge our councillors. The Benalla Rural City Council has been very engaged and supportive of this particular initiative from even before my time. And I've just been very fortunate that we were able to pick it up and continue to deliver it over the past couple of years in what has been some pretty challenging times. Have some apologies, Councillors Davis and King, Dr Helen Haynes, Independent Member for Indi, Steph Ryan, Member for Euroa, Lauren Orr, Regional Manager, Victorian Chamber of Commerce. How all this began. Sometimes Council doesn't have all of the answers, and this particular initiative was born from the community. Many people would recognise the work of two people, actually three people. Jeff Oliver, who is no longer with us, Thomas Green and Danny O'Donoghue. I think Danny's over there. We've had a fair bit to do this in the initial stages and obviously ongoing. So there was a subcommittee established to look at economic development opportunities and what could be achieved in Benalla. And obviously when I say Benalla, I mean the surrounding districts as well. When I first started, I had a meeting with Jeff and Tom, and they, in their usual fashion, if you know Jeff and Tom, nothing is ever one page. I think this was a 70-page document. But we had some really good chats around what was contained in that piece of work and what we could probably look to deliver in a short period of time. So we actually ended up breaking that document down into the first bite size, so to speak. We went hunting for some money, and we're very, very lucky that we got support from the Victorian State Government. So we're able to leverage that particular investment, and we used that and leveraged it with some federal money or a federal program. Many people might not be aware of this particular program called APR Intern. And so the federal government will actually fund a PhD student to come into any work environment to deliver and work on a particular project for you. So we used the contribution from the Victorian State Government with that APR funding for a PhD student, which was closely linked obviously with Geraldine, who's here with us today as well. We'll introduce Geraldine and she'll facilitate the session for us. So the PhD student, Monica San-Trapeze, she came on board and unfortunately 2 weeks after she started, COVID hit. So she started the project. It did stall for quite some time, but we resurrected it in about May 2020. It wasn't ideal because we had intended to do a lot of that initial consultation face-to-face, and a lot of it had to move to online. So what was a very challenging, people would remember the March, the April, the May, it was very new and it moved very rapidly. And in between all of that, we were trying to do a survey. So a lot of people gave up their time graciously to try and assist us. And we do appreciate that because it was very challenging times for a lot of people. What was born from that was the first stage of a report that obviously Geraldine and Monique presented to the council some months after that, which was well received by the elected members. But there was always the intention to deliver a stage 2, which has been undertaken obviously by the economic development team. Kate Storer has been working on that, done a lot more follow-up work, liaised with more business and education providers, and I believe has produced a report which is in front of people today. Catherine's holding that up. So 2 stages of the document, old project, and that's where we're at. And sometimes when we go through these things, the inevitable question, yeah, but what are you going to do with that data? What are you going to do with this information? I think we've all been involved in conferences and surveys, and you look back after 3 or 4 years and nothing's really happened. Well, our intention is to actually embed this in some of the work that we're continuing to do at the Benalla Rural City Council. And it's why we're here today. It's stage 3 of that particular project. Geraldine, she was just saying it's the first time she's been here since 2020. She was obviously locked down pretty heavily in Melbourne with a lot of her counterparts. So we're very fortunate to have someone of Geraldine's calibre to be involved in the project from inception right through from the first 2 stages and obviously into today as well. And as we said, Geraldine will facilitate the session. The themes you'll see around the room are what we'll be brainstorming today. Those things over there. Council, of course, will continue to play an important role in taking all of this information. In the next 12 months, 24 months, our intention is to probably undertake one of the largest economic development studies and diversification plans this town has ever seen. We'll talk more about that in the coming weeks, but it's a significant piece of work. So when I said before, what do you intend to do with this information? A lot of this information will make its way into that key document and outline not only what our current businesses are doing and how they've grown and how they've dealt with the last couple of years and where they're intending to go, but what are the new opportunities that are coming to town that'll bring new people, hopefully encourage our younger people to, if not stay here, but go away and get educated and recognise that there is an opportunity in rural and regional Australia. If we've seen one thing over the past couple of years, is an exodus of those metropolitan areas and looking for opportunities in, regional Victoria in this case, but regional Australia more broadly. The world is opening up, and I think what we're trying to achieve throughout this particular project is how Benalla can tap into that and hopefully continue to grow what we currently have. In the 3 short years I've been here, I've seen some positive signs. I've spoken to a lot of people who are very, very excited about what the future holds, even with the challenges of the last 2 years. And that's why the council has continued to back this project. We're very, very fortunate that we've got some very intelligent people and committed people that have stayed the course, developed their businesses in town, but we also recognise that the pie has to grow. It has to grow. If we don't, we become stagnant and we'll lose to other regions throughout regional Victoria and regional Australia. So the people that are in this room today, I think, will help us establish what that commentary is and that key information that will go into that key document that we're about to undertake. So with that there, once again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming along, all the staff that have actually given a tremendous amount of time and effort up until this point, the work that Catherine has personally put into this over the past couple of years, and all of the people that have been involved in getting us where we are today. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Geraldine Kenneth, her official title, Associate Professor Business Management at La Trobe University and Director, La Trobe Business School MBA Program. I'm just called the CEO, but hers is much longer, so. Geraldine, I'd like to invite you up to the lectern, and I think the workshop from down there. So thank you, everybody.
I'm a walker, Don. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back. Thank you, Catherine, Dom, councillors, and Adam, who I've met just recently. Economic development is at the heart of what I do, whether it's education or research. What many of you may not know is that I was raised in a country town very, very similar to Benalla. It too was 2.5 hours away from a major city, but it was in Western Australia. So I was born and bred in a place called Wongan Hills, largely wheat and sheep, although it was also home to the state government's Agricultural Research Centre. My parents, at the age of 20 and 24, were the first couple to lease the Shell Roadhouse. It was the only roadhouse between Dalwallinu and Northam. So that was probably around about 250 kilometres, nothing in between. So with a young family, I think that they were very, very busy. They also ran a number of businesses in Wongan Hills, and just before they retired and moved to Perth, they ran a hostel for disabled children from the region so that they could go to the local school. Leaders in the community, I think, just like many of you here today, they established Apex, Rotary, the tennis club, football, netball, actually it's football hockey in Western Australia, although there was a netball club. But also my mother worked at the local city council as well. So it's in my blood, and I'm very passionate about regional development. And so I was really delighted when Monique reached out to me to say that she had this particular opportunity with Benalla. I jumped at the chance and said, I'm not just going to mentor you, I want to get myself immersed in this particular project as well. So, I think it's Dom mentioned, we got here in March 2020. We actually managed to get here. We knew that COVID was around. I think China had started to announce it. It was getting a bit more prevalent around the globe. But we forged ahead. In fact, at that point in time, we had just had the bushfires. I know COVID's probably overtaken that, but it was really disastrous throughout this particular region and New South Wales. So there was a lot of trauma and challenge at the point of time when we were doing the interviews. Also, like Dom said, not only have I not been to Benalla, I have not been out of Melbourne since March 2020. So this is my first visit from about 10 kilometres actually out of Melbourne. I haven't actually ventured very far at all. So I'm a city slicker now, in fact, really city slicker. My husband and I live in one of the apartments that would have housed a number of international students in the middle of the city. It's only just getting to about 95% capacity according to the business manager, but we've had the luxury of only about 30% capacity in our large apartment block. We've decided now we're out of here. It's getting way too busy. So we've had the luxury of 2 years of actually the city being quiet. We've enjoyed having Flagstaff Gardens and Victoria Markets all to ourselves. So we started stage one at that particular point in time. What I've found is that what we found at that point in March 2020 was affected
by COVID-19 pandemic. But all it's really done is heightened everything we found. Where employers were telling us that they had skill shortage, there's even more skill shortage. Where employers were telling us that they found it difficult to find labour, it's even more difficult to find labour. We've had to learn how to use digital technology, so digital skills have become really significant. They're even more significant now. Where they talk to us about the challenge of internet, well, we all know the answer to that question here because you're living with it in Benalla. That has only been exacerbated by what has happened throughout the pandemic, largely being the fact that we've now all gone online, and you've also got all these people that have come out of areas that were in full lockdown wanting to relocate into regional areas. Which leads me to the other parts that have exacerbated even more so. We found accommodation and transport were also a big challenge. I think COVID pandemic has also exacerbated those two issues for you here in Benalla as well. So the findings are not different because of the pandemic, they have just heightened enormously. So let's have a look at some of the things that are in the report that Kate has put together and what that means for stage 3, which is the reason why you're here today. And thank you everyone so much for coming. I had a look at the people that are here on that list. We have got a real brains trust in this room that can find a solution for those particular challenges that we have around the room. So, I'm going to talk to you in a moment about what we hope to achieve today, what we already know, and what we already know is the stage 1 and stage 2 research that many of you have been involved in. And then what are the future actions that we're going to take, both short-term and long-term, to make sure that we are focused on the future and economic and social growth of Benalla and its regions, which is stage 3. And then I'll do a wrap up and we'll talk about the next steps from here. So what do we hope to achieve today? Well, the first thing is that we really do want to have some actions that is going to build this pipeline of jobs and skills for the future industries in Benalla. That's the key element. So key words in there are actions, the pipeline. So we're looking at schools, training providers and industry. So that whole growth of our young people right through to their employment opportunities as they get older. So how are we going to create this pipeline to meet the skills and job needs of the future? That's the aim of today. But in order to do that, I think it's really important that I just run through some of the findings that we had, because this allows you to say, okay, what is the base level? Where are we at now? What do we need to focus on? And what are going to be the priorities? Because we can't do everything. Like Dom said, there was a 75-page document that we produced. Well, you can't do everything in that 75 pages, but you can have a look at what's actually going to make the greatest impact for the community. So, what do we know? Stage 1 and 2. We interviewed and ran focus groups across a number of employers and industry sectors. And as I said, many of your familiar faces were involved in those focus groups, which were across the road, or we came to your place of employment. One of the first things that literally everyone talked about was the difficulty to employ staff. There are a number of reasons for this, and in fact the interviews and focus groups really uncovered an enormous amount, and we let people talk that through because that might actually be at the heart of what this problem is in terms of creating jobs and skills for the future. So in some cases it was lack of aspiration and job attitude, which indicated to us that maybe there's some social and disadvantage issues in Benalla that we could also address as a part of this project. Others, it was about attracting people because maybe you can't compete in terms of salaries. That may have been eliminated a little bit by the fact that people are now looking for a tree change. Got to get out of the city because we don't want to be locked down again, so there's a bit of a fear factor there, so you may have been able to attract some professionals. But I hazard a guess that may not be the case, and you all know the reason why that is. Yes? Does anyone want to hazard a guess as what that might be? You might have attracted them, but they're not working here. Yeah, no place to live. I'm going to talk about accommodation, but they're living here. Let's say they're professionals, they've found a place, they're living here, they're loving it. Where are they working? Working from home for a company in Melbourne, of course. Because what we learned in the pandemic is that productivity doesn't mean you need to be present. You can actually be located in front of your computer, using Zoom, using other technologies to collaborate. And I don't need to go through that because you've all experienced it. But that, when I say this has exacerbated your problem, that has exacerbated the problem of accommodation, because people have come, but they're not necessarily coming for what you want them to come here for, other than spending their money, which is great, but for developing the businesses here. Which, as you already mentioned, has led to insufficient accommodation. This was already an issue and has only been exacerbated. Now, I'm not talking about accommodation necessarily for people locally, but for people, if you want to attract the skills of the future and new workforces, what kind of accommodation do we need to consider? And what does that look like? So there'll be a group, hopefully, that will be really interested in talking about what that might look like. Although I must admit, coming into town, I'm pretty sure that there was an estate on the right-hand side which wasn't there 2 years ago. So maybe a bit of construction's gone on since I was here. It certainly looked like a relatively new estate. And I'm not necessarily saying that we have to keep building and sprawling out, but there could be some innovative solutions for that. Inadequate internet. I don't know if anyone's got a solution for that. Are there any engineers, telecommunications people in the room? Maybe that just needs money thrown at it. But I think that that's actually an Australia-wide issue, but something that we need to consider, and then how do we work with that? And another one that was raised by every single employer, and in the focus groups even more so, and I can only assume that this has got worse during the pandemic, is access to public transport or transport to go to education and or work. So that means commuting between the regional cities, commuting between the TAFEs and the universities, finding ways to get to medical appointments, specialist appointments, etc. So that was something that was raised when we were doing the original research. And also Stage 2 raised that as well. Climate change and bushfires. We are in an area that's prone to bushfires, so that needs to be considered. How do we remain sustainable? And that, I think at that point in time too, we were interviewing Henderson's, and there was issues with supply of forest. I've actually been using this as a case study for our MBA students, that they need to consider the dilemma of whether we chop down more trees, and also look at the supply of products that we need in order to live and survive, which generally come from wood areas. But that could be ongoing, and it's ongoing for both our livelihoods and also our lives. And the thing that was exacerbated is the price of housing, and that was exacerbated by the people coming for tree change. So not only lack of accommodation, but it became unaffordable potentially for local people to purchase homes as well. But a number of challenges there. We've put those challenges, some of those challenges on the table here today, but they were some of the key elements that were barriers to employment here in Benalla. Let's move on to having a look at the skills though. So these are roughly the businesses that we looked at, largely because this is where some of the growth areas are in terms of business investment in Benalla. So what did they say about the skills gap right now? Not what we need for the future, but how can we support their businesses right now? The first thing that they were looking for is more enterprising skills. So people that were more innovative, can come up with ideas, highly motivated, coming to work and can support their businesses. And being work ready. This was an issue that came out regularly, that particularly the young were not ready to actually work in the workplace. So a lot of the support that they required had to be given by the businesses. It leads into a reliable work ethic. You can see the theme here. It's really around those kind of soft skills that you need. They weren't too concerned about technical skills. Their immediate issue was finding people that could do the job. They would train them as long as they were keen and eager and willing to learn, which leads three: the customer service, personal presentation and willingness to learn. They just wanted people that were able to do that, that had the attitude and willingness to be there. Other thing that many were looking for is care. We did interview a number of people from... into here, or we won't have a recording. It's how these things work when you have film crews. But the reason we're doing the recording, by the way, is so that you can come back and look at this, or you can ask your colleagues, families and friends to actually go onto Hive and contribute as well. So this is a bit of an intro for them as well, but they can kind of speed through what they don't want to hear from me, which is an advantage. So you can see the theme. Currently, we need all of those kind of skills. Critical thinking was really important too, so they didn't want to leave their brain at the door. Please bring that in and support us and help our business. Leadership, collaboration and teamwork. Very, very well-regarded skills for the workplace. And I say that because that's my area of teaching, leadership, teamwork and innovation. Without those, it's very difficult for both businesses and communities to move forward. And then there were still some technical skills that they talked about. Digital engineering and risk management were key at that point in time. But the theme, really looking at the soft skills that were needed. We're not moving away from that. You'll see that there is a priority for us to look at that. But what about the future skills gap? Because we're here not just to do the short term, but also to look at the long-term economic thriving viability of Benalla. Enterprise skills still there. Really important. Maybe it's an opportunity for people to start their own business if they hadn't thought about it. So if we can focus on those skills, we also have more people investing and employing others. Digital and technology skills required for the future, and we've only seen this exacerbated, as I said, as we've learnt to use some of the new technologies. Innovative mindset, customer service and sales, and here we're starting to move into some of the technical skills that people think we need. Engineering, supply chain, surveying, solar. And this is because renewables might be a really good opportunity for Benalla. You've certainly got the weather for it, if we're looking at solar in particular. Not sure about the wind up here, if we wanted to move into wind, no. But certainly it's a good opportunity to attract businesses in that area if you can get the skills and technicians to help support the business investment in that. The other thing actually that a lot of people raised, the real benefit of Benalla is its location. And I felt that again today. I went, oh my God, it's only 2 and 15 minutes up the Hume. Very easy. And you kind of feel like you're ready to stop at about now. So it's a great rest point for people, really good place for logistics, if you're a logistics company, pulling in your trucks, etc. Or even if you're a tourist, halfway and then head through. So the location is great for supply chain. But the other reason why you need more supply chain expertise is that if government and others are to attract business up here, then you need to have the supply chain facilities, logistics facilities for that to happen. So a great growth sector. I have a colleague here with me today. Some of you may have met Fook Nguyen. Fook, do you want to put your hand up? That's Fook's area of specialty. She's right in the middle of actually writing a new course on international supply chain. But Fook is a supply chain expert if anyone wants to pick her brains later on today. Cultural competency, we've got very diverse communities and you might be attracting more diversity into the community, so that's an important competency for the future. Communication, community knowledge and networks, so building effective relationships. We spent quite a bit of time talking about this in the focus groups. It really meant that one of the key leadership elements that we could focus on is how do we create a network that can support this particular project and other projects in a tangible way. We had recommended in our 75-page paper setting up a community hub that becomes a place and space for either leaders or like-minded people to come and meet and create. So almost a creative, intelligent space. Really important to build the networks and relationships which you may already have in the region, but also to allow others to come in and build up their network fairly quickly and contribute to the community. And marketing skills. I'd hazard a guess to say that you'd say digital or social media marketing skills now too are really important, because we've found a way that we can now have everything online. I found it really easy to give gifts to people. In fact, I used Benalla. I don't know if anyone heard of Leaders in Lockdown program that La Trobe University ran throughout, particularly the first year of COVID. 12,500 people did a free leadership course. Why was it free? Because I had alumni like Matthew Curry and others from the MBA volunteer their time for free so that anyone, anywhere in the world could do a leadership program. So the only way I could think to reward them, because we're all in lockdown, what do? Rang Catherine and said, Catherine, can you put together some local produce baskets and send them all off to people? That's what we did. It's a really good way of us showcasing the produce here in Benalla to people throughout all of Australia that were helping us in this particular program. But it was social media and the ability to do it online that made it a really easy way of doing that transaction. So that's the future skills. And the reason why those skills are needed are because these particular jobs are the ones that the industry felt were going to be needed in Benalla in the future. More finance people, more people in marketing and multimedia, building, construction, electricians. I mean, that will certainly help if we're starting to think about how we're going to alleviate the accommodation problem, although you're probably already struggling to find plumbers, electricians. In fact, you're probably even finding it difficult to get wood supplies, even though wood's local here. I hear that builders are finding it really tough to actually get product in to build at the moment, and that's a global supply chain issue. We need more engineers, we need general construction and labourers, I've talked about that. The other is EPA specialists, and that goes to the fact that this region could be a really good region for advanced biotechnology and also renewable energy. Right. Robotics, yes, what a great industry to have here. That'll be fun. That would maybe attract some of our younger generation to be motivated as well to get involved in that. Programming, cloud-based IT, this can be done anywhere, any place in the world now. I also run a program in partnership with Sheffield Hallam University in the UK, and graphic design and product and industrial design students work for small businesses here in Melbourne. So they're able to do all of that virtually. They've created product branding, they created websites, online shopping, beehive technology, a whole number of things. So I think in this new virtual world, one of the other things that we learned is that you can also have expertise supporting your business that don't need to be located here. Well, maybe that's an answer to the accommodation, who knows. But now that we have, if you've got high speed internet, broadband, then you'll be able to do some of these activities. Data analytics, I don't need to let you know that you're probably all experiencing that, but data analysts are in high demand. They're in high demand in terms of our teaching, but also in terms of the graduates that we produce, they get jobs immediately. Lifestyle coordinators. Now a lot of this came out of when we were working with health and aged care. They said that the next iteration of sort of OT, occupational therapy, is this need for personal carers that are almost like a personal trainer in terms of exercise, but it's actually working with people on a whole bunch of different things. Maybe this is an opportunity to have people, you know, these board games can be commercialised as well, not just something that's offered as a connection. But having lifestyle activities is in demand here. Personal and fitness and preventative health and general manufacturing jobs. I don't think there's too many sectors that are left out, are we? I think we're creating a big city, not a rural city. That's a really good point. What DeSales was mentioning is that we need something that will enliven our young people, keep our young people here, because we're an ageing population. I think that's almost a global challenge as well, and a major part of this particular project, hence saying pipeline. What do we do with our young now so that we are creating a future for them in the future? Right, I need to move on. We also need drivers, of course. So how do we do this? This is where you come in. On page 23 in that report is a very extensive list of formal and informal qualifications that people could do if they wanted to in this area. We don't need to cover off on that. That's already available. What we need to focus on is just some priorities, and together with the team at Benalla City Council, we came up with the 9 priorities that you can see around the room. These are, they aggregate up what the findings are and where we need to go in the future. So the next part of the session today is for you to think about which one of those 9 elements are you passionate about, or you feel you can contribute now or in the future, or you'd like to offer some solutions. Then this is where you need to go, to the one that you find you're most passionate about. And if we've got time, we'll be there for 15 minutes, and if we have time, you'll have another rotation. So pick your favourite and then pick another one that you might want to go to after that as well. It might be a bit confusing. I may have to move you around. I don't want to find that we've got 100 people at one and none at the other. So I may shuffle you around, or Catherine may as well. What are those 9 areas? Just briefly. One is if you're interested in how do we attract investment and business, and in what area. So the best fit investment for Benalla, that's here at this table. When you come to your table, you can crowd around the glass and write on here, like I've got a piece of butcher's paper here, or you can bring your chairs and also sit around the table here. At each table there will be a leader, a facilitator, someone that has some expertise and is passionate about this, and you'll have a scribe as well. The collation of what you come up with, the facilitator, leader, will then present for 1 minute later on. So you get to hear in 1 minute what the outcomes are of the different tables. So then we also have 2, which is solutions for accommodation. This is accommodation for professionals that you want to attract to Benalla. So we're being a little bit more specific about that. If you're going to attract the skills and jobs you need in the future, how can you accommodate them in Benalla? Innovative transport solutions. I don't need to go into that. I think many of you experience what that one is. How do we activate the untapped workforce? I'm not narrowing this. You can go as broad as you want if you're going to that group. It could be women returning to work, it could be people with disabilities, it could be those that are socially disadvantaged. How do we activate that workforce? One around key qualifications, the technical skills, so building on what we already know around the formal and informal training that's already provided. How do we work on the soft skills? The prerequisites for being job ready. It's not just about having the skill, but it's about those employability skills as well. How do we develop the digital skills? How do we develop enterprising and startup skills so that people are encouraged to actually start their own business in the area? Maybe that's also a way to enliven our young people to start their own business. And community leadership. Community leadership is not about a charismatic leader that can run something. It's actually everyone is a leader. So anyone can step up or stand up and be a community leader. So looking at how do we activate that within the community. So there's the 9 priorities. You've had a couple of minutes while I've been going through it to think about which one you might like to go to. And now I'm going to challenge you to find one, go to it, and then my challenge and Catherine's challenge is to disaggregate everyone so it's a little bit more even. Thank you. I think the key thing that was going through my mind is that we really need to map this, because many of the solutions that you came up with, and still some of the barriers, are all intertwined. So we can't just look at each of these priorities necessarily in isolation. We need to combine them together and see whether there are 3 or 4 or 5 major initiatives that will support all of these priorities collectively. Whose job's that? Well, probably mine. In the first instance, I'll work with Catherine and my colleague Fook and Dom and his team, and let's see whether there is something that we can look at here collectively that we've gained from the room and map it, take a systems approach so that we're not duplicating and using unnecessary resources. What's the next step from here? After we've collated the information from here, we'll also have a portal open for you to further contribute. This was really the start of stage 3. You've started the conversation, you've sparked some ideas that might spark ideas for other people to contribute. It really is a consultation process with many people in the community that we can contribute. So if you know people that couldn't make it today, or you've got family and friends that you think would like to contribute, young people that are great with the internet and can get into the portal and contribute in a virtual way, that will be absolutely fantastic, and we'll come up then with some really meaningful outcomes for this community so that you thrive into the future. The next generation will be saying, thank God we had leaders on the 3rd of March, and the 3rd of March in Benalla who put this together, because that has been what has helped our community and my family and my children in the future survive. So, over to Adam. We're going to wind up now, and you can go about all the important things that you need to do today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Geraldine. Just very quickly, make everyone turn around. I'd just like to thank everyone for their contribution today. Look, it's going to be valuable, particularly in my role with the council. I'd like to thank the facilitators and the scribes, the catering, Bree Goldhammer and the Saints Footy Club for opening the bar, which I got really excited about, but it was only coffee. Also the organising committee, Geraldine, Fook, Sally, Kate and Catherine, and lastly, the state government for enabling us to put this on and fund it. Thank you, and thanks for all coming. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you next time.